Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Tuesday, November 10th. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief of Real Clear Politics. Although I didn't get enough sleep last night, I was awakened by people calling me frantically. Tom, what did you do in Pennsylvania that had people going crazy?
Yes, we did have a little episode last night.
Explain it to our viewers in case they missed it.
So I think it started with Rudy Giuliani. I'm not 100% positive about that, but I believe Rudy Giuliani tweeted something last night saying that we had rescinded our call in Pennsylvania and that, don't believe the fake news, sort of implying that we were reacting to the Trump administration's lawsuits and that they were getting traction and that we had, as a result, rescinded a call in Pennsylvania that put Biden back under 270.
Wait a minute, Tom. Wait, let me stop you there. Do we even do stuff like that? Do we rescind calls like that? And why did they give us so much? Why do they care what we do anyway?
Well, look, I mean, for better or worse, all these media organizations make calls, right? They do, and that's been a controversy that's gone on this year with Fox News, for example, and I think Fox and AP are the only ones who've called Arizona to this very point, right? Okay. And so we do that, but I mean, we are not we do not have a decision desk per se, and so we never called Pennsylvania. So the long and short of it is really Rudy Giuliani's tweet was inaccurate. We did not rescind a call. We actually never made a call in Pennsylvania. We have had, we still have 5 states outstanding: Alaska, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. They're either still counting votes in all of those states. I believe in all of those states, they're still counting votes. There's still votes outstanding. And so, look, it was a non-story, but it went wild on Twitter and apparently on Facebook as well. And so I issued a tweet last night saying, look, this was not correct. And I think... Wait
a minute. All right, but let's be blunt here. Let's be honest. Let's not pull our punches. So in a tweet accusing the media of being fake news, Rudy Giuliani was spreading fake news.
Well, that's right. And, whether it was intentional or unintentional, I mean, I'll leave that for others to decide. I'm not going to try and discern Rudy's motives, but the bottom line is it's incorrect. That is, we never called Pennsylvania, so there was nothing to rescind. So at the end of the day, it was really, a non-story and a controversy that sort of got ginned up and went viral and out of control. But it made for an interesting evening last night.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead and finish that.
It made for an interesting evening last night.
All right, let's take a step back, though, and look at this. A lot of people are calling Joe Biden the president-elect. Joe Biden himself is acting that way. The Trump campaign the president hasn't conceded yet. And they're saying there are these irregularities and other things that, they're implying the Democrats are trying to steal the election from them. But if all they have is, they don't have any evidence. I mean, this to me last night, this little episode with Giuliani and other people retweeting it and me getting all these calls, I think it undermines the case. If these people want to contest an election, Tom, they better come up with facts, and I think they should do it soon. Do you agree with that?
Not totally. I mean, I do think they have some examples, right? They do have some. They have sworn legal documents by people saying they saw irregularities. What they don't have, at least as far as I've seen, is enough evidence of systemic irregularities and fraud in enough of these states, right? We're not just talking about overturning a single state. We're talking about 15,000 votes in Arizona, again, still being counted, and that margin's coming down a little bit, but it looks like, I'm not sure Trump's going to get all the way into the lead there. We're talking about 12,000 votes in Georgia. We're talking about 45,000, at least right now, still with votes to be counted in Pennsylvania. So they need to prevail in all of those states, or even if they get a favorable result in one of those states, it's not going to be enough for them. So I think there are examples, and they need to be litigated in court, and I think that's all fine, well and good. But at the end of the day, if they're not able to produce evidence of widespread and systemic irregularities and fraud, even if they overturn the result in one state, it's not going to be enough.
Let me ask you another thing, Tom, because I've been wondering about this. Donald Trump 4 years ago carried many of these same states by very narrow margins. And, the Democrats behaved toward him in the last 4 years, in my opinion, they never really accepted him as president. And they brought up this Russian narrative, and they did other things that really, I think, undermined this idea that if you have an election and lose it, you should acknowledge that and acknowledge it gracefully and treat the other person as president. But that doesn't really excuse Donald Trump for doing the same thing 4 years later. And I'm wondering at what point the people close to him will say, you know what, we carried these states 4 years ago very narrowly. Now we lost them very narrowly, and we need to admit that and move on. And I don't know when that's going to happen. Do you have any idea when it will happen?
No, I don't. I think eventually, and I don't know when, but if Trump doesn't prevail in court, but that's not going to stop. There's a poll out this morning, a morning consult poll. 70% of Republicans do not think this election was free and fair. Right? So that's not going to stop his supporters from believing this was stolen from him. It's probably not going to stop Donald Trump from believing it was stolen from him. It's not going to stop this sort of acrimony. And part of the problem, Carl, is that the media, in the way that they've conducted themselves over the past 4 years, has so undermined themselves, right? That public trust in our institutions is so low now. There's no getting that back. There's no putting that toothpaste back in the tube, right? You're going to have, and I said this before, and I hate to say I told you so, but half the country is going to walk away from this election. It was going to be one way or the other. And believe me, if Donald Trump was ahead by 15,000 votes in Arizona, and if he was ahead by 12,000 votes in Georgia and 45,000 votes in Pennsylvania, you can bet that Democrats would be in court. You can bet that 70% of Democrats would have said they would have said this race was stolen from them, but because it was voter suppression, right? And there were all these things that the GOP did to keep voters away from the polls. Stacey Abrams still hasn't conceded the Georgia race. It would have been that writ large, and you would have had half the country walk away thinking that the election was stolen from them. That's where we are, and that's not going to change. That's not going to change regardless of what happens.
Well, that's true, Tom. But now Donald Trump is using that language, voter suppression. He says that these inaccurate polls were a form of voter suppression. And he's
saying a bunch of things. He's saying that, and he's saying, there were extra votes that were counted. They came in late. He's got a bunch of different arguments flying around, but sure, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, there's a precedent though. And the precedent is 2000 and Al Gore, because he was the sitting vice president, not the former vice president like Joe Biden. It was up to Gore to actually read the tally in the Senate of the Electoral College. And he was bitter. And he was unhappy, and he carried the popular vote. He never fully accepted the Florida recount or the Supreme Court decision, but he did his duty. And I submit to you that, if Donald Trump doesn't do his, that's a new and dangerous territory. And even if I stipulate to everything you said about his supporters and how they have a right even to feel suspicious about the media's role, but you and I have not. We haven't been on that train. We haven't pretended he wasn't legitimate. We've been pretty straight. And I'm just telling you that you have an election and there has to be a result. And one of the things we learned from 2000 is that the concession speech is not just a nicety. It's part of the process. It signals to the opposition that they need to stand down and that the election was over and, to regroup for the next election. And at some point in the next, weeks, Donald Trump's going to have to come to that point, or we're entering a dangerous new territory.
I don't disagree with that. At some point he's going. If his legal challenges do not pan out, if they get thrown out of court, and some of them already have, right? Then he's going to be left with no choice but to concede. And he may not even concede, Carl. Okay, and to your point, maybe that's Norm Buster, but he is going to leave the White House, and the country is going to move on, even if his supporters feel like it was wrongly decided, it was fraudulent, whatever. The country's going to move on. That's just, I don't buy this whole thing like Trump's going to barricade himself in the White House and, the military is going to have to go in there and, frog march him out or something. That's just absurd. But I don't think that I do think that, moving forward, depending on how this works out, it's going to be, the country is not, all this talk of unity, right? is just, I mean, Republicans aren't buying it for exactly the reason that we talked about. I mean, it's like you treated Donald Trump this way for 4 years, literally from the day he took office, right? Ben Rhodes was on Andrea Mitchell's show yesterday saying Joe Biden's having, conversations with foreign leaders about policies and when he takes over and moving forward. That's the exact same reason.
Logan Act.
The Logan Act and, Michael Flynn. And I mean, how dare they do this? And let's wiretap. I mean, so the double standards are going to be, not going to sit well with Republicans and Trump supporters. And so this idea that since the day Trump took office, we've treated him as an illegitimate president and we've been resistant, we impeached him, we did all these things. And now let's come together so we can move forward and do, I mean, it's fantasy land that's going to happen. And I think we're in for, 4 more years of the same stuff, just on the other side of the coin. I mean, I don't think.
Well, usually, Tom, I try to end this on an upbeat note, but I'm going to let you have the last word there because you've been right about this all along. You predicted a disaster. That's kind of what we've got. Anyway, I'm Carl Cannon, Washington bureau chief for Real Clear Politics.
And I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RealClearPolitics. And this has been the RCP Takeaway for Tuesday, November 10th, 2020.